What's up guys, and welcome back to Planet 40k. In this video today we're going to be talking about tomb blades, and we're going to be asking ourselves the important questions when making a list and fielding your tomb blades. So we've got 6 questions for you today, such as what are the best weapon options, what's the best Wargear options, the best detachment, and so on. Before we do get into today's video, this video is sponsored by the Baron of Dice. Back on the Baron of Dice website, I've gone on to Sci-Fi, gone back to Xenos, and I've spotted some more cool dice that I'm definitely going to get my hands on when I can. Where was it? It was down here. Day of the Dead Dice Orange Coffin. These are my type of colours. The orange is very nice, and I definitely want to get myself some of these. Orange with the grey-black effect. You can get them in 25, you can get them in 50. Square corners, round corners. You can get them in minis as well if you want, which is quite helpful for wound markers if you want to play with those. But yeah, oh, there they are. There's the round edges that I definitely would like. So get on over to the Baron of Dice if you want to get some of these. Free shipping on your very first order, and they have them in stock. So get on board and get ordering. So make sure you are checking out the Baron of Dice. The link will be down in the description down below. Right then, let's get on with these 6 questions in relation to tomb blades. Question number 1. What's the best detachment when we're talking about tomb blades? For me, tomb blades are very good in a lot of detachments because of their scoring potential due to their movement and their mobility. But I think the best detachment right now for tomb blades would be the Star Shatter Arsenal. They get the +1 to hit against enemy units on objectives, which all Necron units get, so that's, that's okay, that's good. But what I really like is the access to assault, because they're mounted. They've got the mounted keyword, so therefore all their weapons have assault, which means you're not just tied down to the Tesla weapon anymore, which is the only weapon that naturally has assault. So now all of a sudden you can be still moving, advancing, and still firing with your twin Gauss blasters, and then doing the movement after shooting, because that's what tomb blades actually do. So for me, I would say the Star Shatter Arsenal. In fact, in this detachment there is a stratagem called Chrono Shift, which allows a vehicle or mounted unit to get an auto advance roll of a 6. So you don't even need to roll for it. That's going to give you a lot of movement. I mean, the movement is 12 inches anyway. You're then going to get a 6 auto advance 6, so that's 18 inches. You're then going to fire, and then you're going to move an additional 6 inches more than that. That's a total of 24 inches, and you fired as well. That's cracking mobility. That's really good in any detachment, but especially this one because you can auto advance 6 inches. What about other detachments? Do tomb blades work in other detachments? I would say quite helpful for the Canoptic Court to get a nice early power matrix. I mean, normally Canoptic Wraiths can maybe do that job for you, but this could be an option to get those early objectives, early game. In fact, it doesn't even have to be early game. They could be put in reserves and be brought out late game, mid to late game, just to get onto the objectives to unlock the power matrix and let your Wraiths go and do other jobs where they're re-rolling all their hit rolls. They're also helpful in the Obeisance Phalanx detachment because they've got the Enslaved Artifice stratagem, which is 5+ critical hit rolls for just 1 CP. Now we will be talking about the weapons shortly in a moment, but there's a lot of different abilities with the weapons. For example, the twin Gauss blasters has lethal hits. The twin Tesla carbine has sustained hits too. So now this would apply on a 5+ roll rather than a 6+ roll with that stratagem in that detachment. So they work in the Obeisance Phalanx, they work in the Canoptic Court. We've already mentioned the Star Shatter Arsenal. You could argue the Awakened Dynasty. It could be led, I don't think it's a massive bit of synergy, but they could be led with an enhancement on a character. The Annihilation Legion, not so much needed, not that useful. And the Hypercrypt Legion, they've already got the mobility, so I don't think they're as useful as, for example, Death Marks, Hexmark Destroyers and so on because of Deep Strike. But quite a lot of the detachments, yeah, I'd say useful. Next question on this list is what's the best weapon for tomb blades? So we've already mentioned briefly a few times what weapons they've got. They've got the Particle Beamer, the Twin Tesla Blaster, or the Twin Tesla Carbine. Now I'm going to put these on the screen so that we know what we're talking about. We can all follow follow at home. Now, if you're not in the Star Shatter arsenal, you're going to be using that Tesla carbine to gain assault. Probably the main go-to weapon if you're not in that detachment, because you want to use the mobility. You want to be able to advance and still move, and then fire. That's what I meant to say. You want to move, advance, then fire, and then move again. Because if you don't fire your weapon, you're not going to be able to move again after firing, because you've not fired. And that's what their ability is, which is the evasion Ingrams. After shooting, you can move. So Tesla is a good option if you're not in the Star Shatter arsenal. Now personally, I go with the particle beamers. I like the fact that you get D6 shots with blast as well, and that's per Tomb Blade. So if you've got a unit of 3, that's 3d6 with blast in terms of the shots, and devastating wounds is on top, which is quite handy. Okay, it does lack AP, but a lot of the time there's cover saves that kind of negate that AP. Another issue with the other two weapons, which is the Ghost Blaster and the Twin Tesla Carbine, is the number of shots. We've kind of just said, you know, you get 3d6 shots if you've got a 3-man unit of Tomb Blades with the particle beamers. But because the other weapons only have 2 shots per Tomb Blade, it's a little bit lackluster. Yes, you get the range of 24 inches rather than 18, but they've got the mobility anyway, so you can get within range quite comfortably. One other thing though is you do lose, of course, the twin linked capability, but if you've only got a minimum amount of shots, twin linked isn't as useful. I'd rather maximum amount of shots, and if devastating wounds pops up, fantastic. If it doesn't, that's okay, but blast will also definitely help. You just imagine rolling 3 6s. Obviously that's not going to happen often, but you roll 3 6s on a 3-man unit of Tomb Blades, and you've got 18 attacks plus the blast. If you've got blast going off, yeah, it's quite a nice little cushion of shots to at least do a bit of damage to redeem some of your points back, I guess. That's the weapon options. What about the Wargear? What Wargear should we select? There's options within the Wargear department. You've got any amount of models can have the shield veins, and any number of models can be equipped with one of the following, which is the Nebuloscope or the Shadow Loom. So the shield veins are a 3+ save instead of a 4+ save, but your movement characteristic goes down to 8 inches. I think the whole point of Tomb Blades is the movement characteristic, so reducing it down from 12 to 8, I don't like doing that, so I never take shield veins. Yes, you could have a potential 3+ armor save, but maybe you get cover anyway. I'm not, you know, I'd rather keep the movement there. As for the other two, you've got the option either or, Nebuloscope, which ignores cover. That's okay, that is okay, but I really like the Shadow Loom, a -1 to hit at range because of stealth. I think that's really key, giving them a little bit more defense, and yeah, -1 to hit. You want these things alive because they're going to be doing your secondary scoring, of course. This could be your distant ones, like behind enemy lines, area denial in the centre, established locus. It could be an action, you know, it could be most of the cards Tomb Blades are capable of doing, unless you do advance. Then the actions won't apply because you can't advance and do an action. That's the one drawback, I suppose, with Tomb Blades in comparison to a deep strike unit such as a Hexmark Destroyer, because they can deep strike in and just do an action straight away. They don't need to advance, they don't need to do anything like that, they just instantly action. So that's the one drawback with Tomb Blades in comparison to those deep strike units. But yeah, going back to that Nebuloscope, ignoring cover, I don't really take Tomb Blades for damage. I'm taking them, like I said, for secondaries, so I'm not that interested in ignoring cover. If you take them for damage, I think you would probably take them in a max unit, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's probably better options, Immortals with a Plasmancer, Locust Destroyers with a Locust Lord, and so on. So for me, they are scorers, not offensive shooters. How important is the Scout move? We've not mentioned that ability in this video yet. They've got Scout, which is it? Is it 8 or 9? Always get them mixed up with the Trustor because it's 9. So they've got Scout 9 inches. So after you've all deployed, you can, before turn 1 begins, move them 9 inches. As long as you're staying 9 inches away from enemy units and enemy deployment zone. Scout is important in the game because, well, it's really important. If you think about it in terms of going back to those secondary objectives, if you can scout 9 inches in a straight line, you then move in 12, you could advance d6 or even auto advance in the Star Shatter arsenal, shoot, move another d6. That's between 28 and 33 inches depending on your advance roll. Could just be a straight 33 with the auto advance, of course. This also depends on if there's any terrain in the way and objects that are going to slightly hinder your movement, but in theory you can go 33 inches right from the get-go, turn 1 after scout. I mean, that is a massive help turn 1, because if you start pulling some really difficult secondaries turn 1, I mean, some of them do allow you to shuffle them back into the deck. I can't remember what card it is. Was it Behind Enemy Lines or was it Storm Hostile? There's one or two cards that you can ignore turn 1 and put it back in the deck. But sometimes you've got the option of now doing it. You can say, you know what, my Tomb Blade can actually do this card, so I'm going to go for it. Maybe it's turn 2, and maybe turn 2 you've done all your scout, and then you want to get to the complete other corner. They've got the capability, they've got the mobility to go and do that secondary. Other times it will help a cheap unit get into position for area denial. I mean, 33 inches is more than enough to get you to the centre of the battlefield. And like we mentioned, you could just opt to not advance and then do an action such as sabotage, recover assets, cleanse and so on. Because you've gone 9 inches with the scout move, you can just go a regular 12 inches. So now we're already talking 21 inches there. You don't need to advance. Do your sabotage or whatever it is. They're quick enough to do that kind of stuff. So is it important? For those secondary cards, yes. There's also another reason why it's important, because if you scout first, you could potentially be a little bit of a blocker for your opponent's scout move, because they can't go within 9 inches. So I've seen that happen a few times. I think it was against Tau, where I had scout, they had scout. I think it was like, what are those things called? Is it Kroot? It was Kroot, wasn't it? I don't know if the rules have changed since I've played Tau, but I think it was Kroot. They had scout, and I then couldn't do all my scout moves because they were literally in my way. So it's like a bit of an anti-scout move by actually having scout. Very similar to infiltrators, in fact. And then we've got another question here. Take a unit of 3 or a unit of 6. All depends on what you want to do. Very similar to the previous video we did with flayed ones. If you go max unit, you're going for the offense. You'll go into kill stuff. If you're going for a minimum unit, you're going for scoring. Cheap and cheerful, hopefully get ignored. For me, I'm taking them in 3s. I'm going cheap and cheerful, 75 points. I'm not too bothered about the damage output. I've got other units that I can do damage with, whether it's Catan, Locust Destroyers, Doomsday Arcs and so on. I've got other units to do that. This is the Tomb Blades are what I would class as a secondary scoring unit. Not necessarily primary scoring, not necessarily for holding down objectives, but for your secondary cards, this is one of those go-to units for me, alongside Hex Marks, Death Marks and so on. Offensively, they are okay, but like I said already, you've got your Mortals with a Plasmancer, Locust Destroyers with a Locust Lord. They're just going to do a better job. You may as well save it for those units that have got a lot more synergy, where they've got re-rolls to hit or re-rolls to wound, critical hits on a 5+ naturally with a Plasmancer. You don't need to use a stratagem to gain that ability. There's just better units to do the offensive work, even though they can do the offensive work. Now, if they had their old, I think it was 9th edition, Tomb Blades you had the option of giving them an invulnerable save. If we still had that invulnerable save option, then I would likely take them in bigger groups of 6. I think we used to take them in 9s, in fact. But because we can't, because they do go down quite easily, I'm sticking to them in units, I'm sticking to the scoring, and yeah, not for me in terms of offense. Right, that is my 6 questions in relation to Tomb Blades. Make sure you are subscribed on your X's and check out the Baron of Dice if you haven't already. Get your hands on those orange and grey dice, they do look kind of cool.